thank you so much for joining. Normally, I ask questions, but to start this podcast, I am just going to clear out and tell me the weird, wild, and ridiculous story of how the Shorty Awards logo was inspired and a lot of other things.
Right on. It's so nice to see you, Jeff, and thank you so much for having me. And I'm excited to be here. I want to kind of tell a little bit of the story of the Shorty and my relationship with Shorty Awards. But the funny thing about how Shorty Awards, the branding was inspired by an artwork that some of you might seen back in 2008 all the way to 2013. There's a teeny tiny little startup you might heard of called Twitter. And so every single time when Twitter goes down, people will be able to see the white whale, the white beluga whale, lifted by little birds. That was actually the very reason why I'm here, because I am the artist behind the artwork. I created the artwork around 0607 when I was finished my exchange study in London, and I was doing my final year study in Sydney, Australia. I was originally born and raised in Shanghai, China. So I was an international student back then in Sydney, and I created the whale because my sort of love for my friends overseas were big, and I couldn't be there for their birthday party or anniversary. So I made this whale as my biggest wish, carried by little birds across the ocean for all my friends. So I named it Lifting a Dreamer, and I put it on the internet. It was towards my graduation. And the next thing I know, there was a tiny little startup in San Francisco called Twitter. What's really funny is I didn't know this until much later. The co-founder and creative director of Twitter, Biz Stone, found the image online and licensed it, and then used it as a capacity page, arrow page. What's really funny is the way he look at the image is he interpret the whale as the capacity issue, and the little birds were correspondent to the Twitter bird, which is their logo
Hmm.
and their branding. And I didn't know this until potentially like late 2008. I heard the story from NPR story, and it was really funny. I initially knew about it because there was a user and who emailed me. His name is Dylan from Ireland. He's like, "Hey, I don't know if you know, but your whale is kind of beloved by the global Twitter users, and have you used Twitter?" And I think that was around uh, possibly 2000, early 2008. I just noticing there was a website. And then the next thing you know, it was global financial crisis. So I got a request from the email. There was three guys: David Bill, Chad Scott, and Tim Bellon. They're all from San Francisco Bay Area. They're entrepreneurs and angel investors, and they wanted to throw a party to celebrate the global financial crisis. And so they reached out to me completely out of blue and say, "Hey, we want to throw a party to celebrate failure." And who would be the best person to create something for the community? We thought about you because everybody knows about the Twitter fail whale, and we realized that you created the whale. So would you be interested doing something for the community? Because this is a community event, we don't have any budget, but if you ever come to San Francisco, we will throw you a party. That was summer 2008, and I just graduated from school, and I was on my holiday. I thought to myself, I have some time, and I have already interacted with the community online, and I thought, these are a bunch of fun people. They're celebrating failure, and I want to be part of it. So I decided to do something for them, and the next thing you know, the artwork was being featured in Wired magazine. I made a black and white whale with people holding glasses, like celebrating, and 6 months later, this was when Shorty Awards came to the scene. So people started to vote. People started to vote for me on Twitter. So I would receiving tweets, and I would receiving a lot of like notifications. And that's how I know about Shorty Awards. And I have friends in New York who are virtual friends who I met through Twitter and other social medias, who were encouraging me to participate and interacting with the community. And then around 2009 February, was very fortunate to be the winner of the first Shorty Awards. And that's how I ended up getting the opportunity to come to New York to meet people in person and getting the awards. But the funny thing is, because the flight from Sydney to New York at the time was almost 20 hours, or probably more than
Mm.
that, and there was no direct flight. So I have to actually take a layover in the West Coast. And I thought to myself, uh, hello, there's these people owe me a party. If I don't make it now, I don't know when. So I decided to reach out to the community who hosted the first Shorty party and said, hey, I am coming to the Bay Area for 3 days. Would you be interested in hosting another party? And I would love to meet you all in person. So that's kind of how it kickstart my engagement and community interaction with the West Coast folks, and that really opens up the trajectory of my career journey, because through that party, through that 3 days, I met so many friends who eventually become either my business partner or my clients, and I got potentially like 80% of the projects around that time coming from the U.S. community.
It's incredible how that stuff can happen, but there's a few sliding door moments in that. So one, you created it because you saw a lot of people on Facebook that you had connected with in uni, right? So you're trying to just politely say, "Oh, I can't make it," right? But the prominent thing is the whale. The birds are just they're there, right? It's all integrated. But then I have to start thinking about like, okay, well, Biz then has to Google probably image search birds. There's no way he gets to a whale without there being birds in it. So if there aren't birds in it, they don't find it, right? Then the piece that you make that is so well intended, right, becomes a different version, right? There's a different connotation to it. It's like, hey, we're so sorry, not that we can't make it to a party, but that our entire system has crashed. And then you also have to think about and for anybody who didn't get to experience those wonderful first few years on Twitter, it crashed a lot. So it was seen a lot. It was almost kind of like a daily occurrence in the beginning. So you have something that becomes well intended, prominent. It changes course. Then another organization, which also tends to host this podcast, then picks it up. It's just the idea that obviously art is open to interpretation, right?
Mhm.
And I commend you for being flexible with it and just seeing where it goes, and then being able to kind of accept that. But it's remarkable to me how so many different people can see something, think something differently, and then it takes on a life of its own. I'm sure this wasn't intended to be the thing that was the kickstart, but it was. And then the other part of it is so often people don't take the meeting or take the party. And I'm so glad you did, because some people are like, oh, no, I don't need a party in my honor for failure. What? No, stop that. That wouldn't, like if I held parties for failure, I'd have to buy a bouncy house, not rent one. Like I would need to have like permanent things in place, because that's just, like I'm cheap. I want to make sure, you get the most value out of it. But was there ever a moment where you were like, should I explain to people what this is, or just go with it?
I think that's a really good question. I think a lot of times I prefer to just go with it, just
Yeah.
because there's less resistance and there's less friction. And obviously, every now and then when people, ask questions, or when people kind of start their own narrative, and I would say, oh, actually, this was my original intention. It only happens when you realize that everybody have their own kind of story and the way they interpret things according to their experience, just like how the way it was interpreted by Biz, because his focus was,
Hmm.
his startup, and it resonated with him on a different level, which I think is incredible about art. Is it's all relational, right? It's the relationship with the piece, even though when you create it you have a different point of view, and your expression later on when it communicate, like the manifestation of your expression when they communicate to another person, because of the other person's situation, they would look at it and they would kind of almost impose or project or relating their own experience onto it. And I think that's actually quite fascinating, um, just communication wise. And I think part of me, I think just go with it. It's coming from your expression. This is kind of like a lot of fine art. It's
Hmm.
just go with it, right? The artist,
Yeah.
the artist of you is a lot of times I just want to explain, or sorry, I just want to express myself and see what's going to come out of it. But a lot of times I think as designers, as whether you're doing public relation, you're doing marketing, a lot of times you do have an intention because you're working with a particular subject matter, whether it's your client or something you care about, it's a mission. Then the artwork itself, it's still part of your expression, but it also works as a medium. And
Yeah.
I love this quote by Masha McLuhan, which is the medium is the message. And if you look at the Twitter fail whale, it's if we're looking at it from the general public point of view, a lot of people see it as a arrow message, and they don't necessarily know the artist, which is me. The original intention of the artwork was not designed as an arrow message. It was designed or arrow message for a tech company called Twitter. It was an initial sort of expression of her self not being able to go to this or these events in like for people who are very important in her life, right? But what's funny about it is now that I look back, that is an arrow message. That's kind of an arrow
Yeah.
message myself. I never thought about it. That is actually an error message. So there is this really interesting kind of almost like a creative jam that you get to know yourself a little bit better and know your work a little bit better. But I think to the core, like you said, is the sincerity. Like
Hmm.
this is something I sincerely apologize. I'm making this whale. And I think what's really interesting is how, whether it's Biz and the Twitter team, when they pick the artwork and they use the artwork at the time, the community resonate with it. And
Yeah.
that is something I think it's very magical because everybody kind of see themselves in the artwork. I've got like Twitter folks message me and say, I am that whale, I am that bird. And that, like, it's incredible to see a piece of artwork creates relationships with people from around the world, people who speak different languages, people who have vastly different cultural background. And I think that a picture worth a thousand words really kind of showcases in this case study.
Well, it's interesting. So we talk about art being open to interpretation, and trust me, I will land this plane. There will be a question at the end of this. But what I find fascinating is you can have something that's intended different ways, but used in the exact same manner. Like you said, what you were using as a message to others was playful but earnest. What Twitter was doing was playful but earnest. They were trying to say, "Hey, we are sorry that this isn't working, but we're also going to do this in a fun way." It's just a weird timing because if you think about the timing of internet culture, early 2000s takes itself too seriously. Right
Mm-hmm.
now, the internet works better. So it was just this space and time in which that plays the biggest part. But here's the question I wanted to ask, which is completely unrelated, which is I think some people are naturally born networkers. Some people lie and say they aren't. And then some people also thrive off like a single introduction. For me, I thrive when there's something else to talk about first, when there's a conversation starter. And what better conversation starter than the whale? So did it make it easier to meet these potential clients in this network in this community because you had a common thing to talk about?
This is a great question. Thank you, Jeff. I think that when you talk about network, it's kind of funny. Literally in the picture, there's a net. You have a
Yeah.
net like lifting the whale.
No
And I
pun
feel,
intended.
yeah, no pun intended at all.
Maybe.
The whale artwork, again, it was surprising to see how many people have seen it. I was in Abu Dhabi, I was in Tokyo, I was in Australia. I lived in Australia, and like almost everywhere I go at the time, people have seen it and people notice that artwork and they remembered it. And I think that was just such a joy, first of all. I think there is a joy that the relationship has already been established even before I met these people in person. And that is very special and very rare. And I think that whether it's business or personal relationship, it is built on trust. It's built on this innate connection that you feel it's genuine or it makes sense. And so I think it's definitely a very powerful tool that um, more people, if anything, should express themselves in artistic form, whether it's through poetry or music, because you see a very different side of them from more of a day-to-day business practice that we know of on a daily basis. And it's quite a intimate thing, which
Yeah,
you don't get a chance to see. Yeah.
yeah. The other question I was going to have is, and then this whole thing becomes a TED talk.
um, yeah, that's also not what I expected at all. It was not what I intended in the first place. And it was funny that it's actually a TEDx talk. It's a TEDx talk that I did in 2019. And it was interesting because it was actually not necessarily because of the whale. It was because of the dumpling,
Yeah.
which is a different story, which is still related. I also made the dumpling emoji, the chopstick fortune cookie takeout box, and boba and peacock emojis, which was something I do as my community effort after I moved to San Francisco. I was initially come to San Francisco because of venture. I was interested in bringing more art into the tech community because I see there's a role that I can play where I have the STEM background. I work with engineers. I was study very rigorous mathematics when I was growing up in Shanghai, and so I have a mathematical brain. But in the same time, I love kind of translating complex ideas into something simple and approachable, and for
Yeah.
people who don't necessarily have an engineering background to also feel relatable. And so that was my initial reason why of moving to the Bay Area, because by 2014, 15, I was already working literally hundreds of startups and tech corporates. And to the degree that the founders of the VC firm or Accelerator 500, they said, why don't you just move to the Bay Area rather
Hmm.
than travel back and forth 7 times a year? Um, and so what's interesting is I was invited to go to people's houses for dumplings, right? And I realized there was no dumpling emoji on my phone. So that time, my friend Jennifer A. Lee invited me to her place to have pot stickers. I was about to message her back a pot sticker emoji or a dumpling emoji. I realized it's not available on
Yeah.
my phone keyboard. And that sort of impulse was like, wait a minute, I'm a designer, maybe I can do something about it. And I made the dumpling emoji, sent it to her. And the next thing you know, we collaborated and we submit the dumpling emoji and other emojis together, which then opens up a lot of new adventures, including the TEDx talk that I did in 2019, because I uploaded one of my dumpling talk on LinkedIn, and at the time it was during Christmas holidays, and the recruiter of the speaker in Palo Alto TEDx find me through LinkedIn, and she just sent me a LinkedIn email, and that's how I got the opportunity. So it's quite remarkable what social media has played the role in my life.
Well, the through line is that you do things that people like, enjoy, and in this case, obviously creates representation because people are like, but we use these things and we would like to have an emoji for them. Also, just as a side note, I use the peacock emoji like a ton because my partner refers to me as a peacock for obvious extroverted tendencies. And so then there's a movie called The Other Guys where Mark Wahlberg famously just goes, "I'm a peacock. You got to let me fly." They don't. But I still just, if any time I'm just like, hey, I got to do this, I just send peacock emoji. And that it explains an entire set of things. All I have to do is just peacock emoji. And I thank you for that. I use it a ton.
Amazing, amazing. Now I know a new use of peacock emoji. Absolutely
You
loved
just
it.
gotta let me fly.
Thank
Yeah,
you for
but that's
sharing.
I wanted to because in keeping the spirit of things you intended for a completely different reason, and then here we go. But you know, there's just do you feel like there are just certain moments well, one, I want to ask, are there certain moments in your career where you're just like, I have to ride the wave? But the other specific question before you ask that is, what is the process of getting an emoji submitted, and how does this happen, and how and why? And I want to know everything.
Yeah,
And and I will
I
add
mean,
to that. I will
sorry.
add to that because
Yeah.
I read and I found out that your boba tea emoji was rejected initially. So what was that experience like?
Oh my goodness, that is a great question. So, the boba tea emoji. That's such a good story. The first time when I submitted the dumpling chopstick fortune cookie takeout box, that's in end of 2015. So it was around the same time I was working at 500 Startups as the global creative director. What's really funny is that the boba tea emoji was also designed out of the sheer love of the community. So the company that I work at, which is called 500 Startups, and at the time, my colleagues at 500, like all of them, love boba. I'm not joking. They're just like boba aficionados, right? And I remember people would like afternoon around 2:30, 3 o'clock, people would just go, let's go boba run. Let's get out of the office and go get some boba tea. And so it happens so often that people literally say, why is there no boba tea emoji? And I heard this so many times. So it kind of just jumped into my subconscious. And it was around the same time I was already making the other emoji submissions. And I thought, well, why don't I do something, to also maybe add the boba tea emoji in the submission because it's sort of all food and beverage related. And then later on, I was traveling. But what's funny is the co-founder of the company, her birthday is on the 24th, which is the Christmas Eve. And people are still working. Mind you, people are still working on Slack and they're still like slacking each other. I'm like, oh, people are still working on a holiday. And I thought, well, it'd be really fun to actually make it as a holiday gift and also kind of a birthday gift for Christine. Her birthday is around the time. So I made a boba tea emoji on the 24th in the morning. And I like finishing the polishing and everything took me a day and I uploaded to Slack. And basically, I said, "Here it is. It's the Christmas gift for the for the company, but it's also a birthday gift for Christine because she loves boba tea." And people are so happy they started to use it. You can see like the boba tea emoji was instantly be integrated to the Slack channel. People were like sending it to everybody, and it was so much fun. They were using it as as the emoji or as a reaction. So it was so great because it was designed again for my folks, but it was also because of technology that enable that quick adaptation, right? Sorry, quick adaptation. It like quickly people could started to utilize it and also interacting with the artwork in a way that I wasn't expected. So yeah, so that's the boba tea story. But what's funny is it was around the same time I was submitting it to Unicode because in order for the emoji to become a official Unicode emoji, it took a lot more steps because basically Unicode, the nonprofit, is going to invent a extra code in the global Unicode keyboard. It's not like Slack. I can just upload the image and it embedded in the actual software itself. So what happened is when we submitted the emoji in 2015, 16, it was rejected because the proposal we wrote do not have enough data to prove the importance of the boba globally. And I I was devastated at the time because I was like, oh man, we did so much. But what's really funny is 3 years later, I got an email from a data scientist, Timothy. And so what happened is Timothy and his friends, Ranjita and Sujay, who all are data scientists, and they all love boba tea. And they actually wanted to do a boba tea submission themselves, and they realized there was already a existing boba tea emoji submission, which was rejected 3 years ago. So this is 2018. So we actually communicate with each other, and they said, we have the missing piece you need, which is
Yeah.
data. So we're able to actually find the data from like Google Analytics and, Google Business, like all the Google search engine, like for the Google News. So we're able to aggregate the numbers to show the increased economic value and also geographic adaptation of the boba tea. And they were even able to like have all these comparison of the search result of boba tea compared with the search result of red wine, sake, and like green tea, matcha. Like it was amazing to see, just the evidence of the boba tea actually surpass some of the numbers of existing drink emojis that's on the keyboard. And that's how Unico finally said, okay, we give you a heads up that this is passed. So that's 2020. Finally, it was available on everybody's keyboard. Took us almost 4 years.
Wow. That's
That
a
is
long time.
incredible. I also like, yeah, just look at the data. People like boba. Come on. What I'm always surprised with is like, does it hurt the world to have another podcast? Does it hurt the world to have another emoji? We need things to communicate.
Yeah.
So
What's an emoji that you think, what's a category of an emoji that you think is still lacking in terms of variety? Like, is it
Oh, that's such a
food
good
or is it
question.
expressions?
Oh, I mean, there's so many things that we could do. Like there's a lot of endangered animal species that could definitely have more presence. Also, I love the fact that I just recently recognized, so the kami emoji, which is like this,
Okay.
that's so for a long time I thought it was the shaka emoji, but it turns out this is actually the kami, the original
Really?
kami emoji. Exactly. So that part I thought it was really interesting, where even it's the same gesture, but the direction of the gesture means different things, and
Yeah.
it's very confusing when you send someone a shaka emoji, where it's being kind of uh, like if like hearing impairing people, they have to visual impairing people, they have to actually hear, right? But the interpretation of that become a call me, right? So if you're sending someone a shaka, the other person receive it as call me. So it was kind of interesting how the visual doesn't always translate into the
Yeah.
same meaning, depends on the context or depends on the machine reading.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I also
Yeah.
wanted to ask, we talked about partnerships and the whale. So what was it like designing that artwork for Conan O'Brien?
Yeah, that's a great question. So that was actually a very serendipitous story, because I did the artwork, which Lifting a Dreamer, which eventually became the Twitter farewell,
Yeah.
and this was in around 2000, I believe it was 2010. Uh, it was kind of a miraculous journey. Let me just kind of start from what we kind of left off. So because of the popularity of the Twitter whale, it was in 2009 I came over to the US. And throughout that entire year, I was actually, even though there's a lot of really wonderful uh, just press and also opportunities. But in the same time, I was questioning myself, I was in my 20s and I created this artwork, which suddenly become this global icon. And there's a lot of really wonderful accolades coming after that. Right. And I was questioning myself, like whether I will be able to make something better than that.
Yeah.
Does that mean
Yeah.
like this is it? Like I basically peaked and I couldn't do anything more than that. So there was this moment of anxiety, and there was also a lot of fear coming from a young creator. And I don't think I have any mentor or existing people can give me advice what to do, especially when you're facing also a lot of extra pressure coming from different areas. For example, I was very young. I was in my mid to late 20s. And I was in my mid 20s. I was in my mid 20s. Let me just make sure. I was in my mid 20s, and all of a sudden I was on New York Times. I got all these awards, and I was like, what does that mean? What do I do to deserve this? There was a moment of questioning myself. And there's also around the same time, uh, I saw some of my artworks was being used by different people in different merchandises without my permission. And so there was a lot of kind of uncertainty. And also, I don't know how to deal with all these emotion and situation that I was facing. And I was also questioning about, you know, as a young artist, like what I'm gonna do when you facing things that's unfair to you. And I actually came across a video uh, of a famous American talk show host who was also going through a pretty challenging time in his life. And he was leaving a major firm that he worked for a long time. And that happened to be Conan O'Brien. This was towards the end of 2009. It was the time that I was also very much experiencing a lot of just a lot of emotion, and watching comedy was the only outlet for me to feel relaxed. So I was watching a lot of comedy on YouTube, and somehow the YouTube algorithm like give me a push notification. You might be interested into this video. So I watched the video. I was like, this is exactly the message I need, because it was his goodbye speech at NBC. And people were asking him, this is your last day at NBC. What would you like to tell people, especially the young people? And he said this, he said, people, especially young people, the only message I want to really tell today on my last day is never be cynical. If you work hard and if you're kind, amazing thing is going to happen. And he's like, amazing thing's going to happen. And I remember I was just watching it, and I noticed myself just like crying. And I was like, oh my God, I'm crying. I don't even know this guy. Like, what's happening here? I think there is something there is something in his message really resonated with me. And um, the sheer amount of like, sorry, I was really touched by the sheer amount of optimism. And even though he's going through a really rough time, he is still giving others energy. It's incredible. And I think I really felt that. I felt that sort of energy exchange. And I think that was the reason why I realized was like, oh, there's something happening. I don't know what this is. And so that really resonated and also really surprised me. And so I started to watch a lot of his remote and his different segment, and I became a fan because I've been kind of just binge watching all the videos of Conan on YouTube. And little do I know, around 8 months later, this was 2010, around summertime, maybe like July, around July, August. I got an email from TBS, completely like a code email out of blue. They said, hey, we're Team Coco. We work with Conan, launching his new show on TBS. And we love your whale. And we were wondering if we can commission you to a piece of Conan riding the whale called the pale whale, because he's very pale and he loves the whale. And I said, uh, like to myself, I was reading the email. I was like, is this for real? And we had a Skype call. We had a Skype call. That really shows the date. We had a Skype call with
Yep.
the team. I was in Sydney, Australia. I was in my pajama, I remember, and it was a whole team. And they're like, "We want to see you. We want to see you." It was late at night, like 11 o'clock. Um, People are in the East Coast, right? They're like, "We want to see you," and I had to open up my camera. I was in my pajama with all the flowers. It was just the funniest thing. I wish I had a screenshot, but I can only describe that moment of joy. So yeah, so that was my experience with Conan's team, and then when the show actually happened, I happened to also getting an opportunity to have my personal art show in San Francisco on my birthday on December 2nd, 2010. So on my way back to Sydney, again, layover, I thought, why not having a layover in LA and meet up with Conan in person and also say hi to Team Coco. So I sent an email to the team. I said, hey, I'm going to come back to Australia. I'll go back to Australia and I'm going to have a layover in LA. Can I come and say hi? And they said, of course, we'd love to see you. So yeah, so it was like amazing. I went to see the folks. So what's really amazing also, the first time when I come to San Francisco, this was 2009. There was no Airbnb, no Uber. And I had this amazing family who hosted me in 2009, but we were still friends after 15 years. That time going to LA, they said, you know what? We want to drive you there. Don't worry about taking a layover to LA. We'll drive you there. So they drove me all the way from San Francisco to LA. What's really funny is we were a little bit late. Conan already started his show. We were supposed to meet him before he start recording, but he was so nice. He was finishing his hours of recording. We watched the whole recording show, right? We thought that we were just going to be on our way and leave, but he told his team, I want to meet up with Yiying. So I actually get the chance to meet him in person. After his show, we even had a little video interaction together. It was just one of my favorite highlight of just all the journeys that I had. So I'm incredibly thankful that he was really a very important, very, very important person that influenced my journey. And he probably didn't even know that part, how I found him or how his video found me. So I'm really happy that I got the chance to share this for the first time with you guys.
Well, that's the embodiment of his last episode at NBC, right? That they say, if you put kindness into the world, it will come back. I mean, it's not that they are not empty words, and it is very true that if you just spend a little time acknowledging someone, right, or understanding that they've taken the time to be there, what that can do. I never look at things as, okay, I did something, now where's my thing 2 seconds later. It's just, if you keep doing things, eventually you would think eventually things will happen. And also just operating from a standpoint of, if you're just genuine and you're there to meet people and have fun, then that's a better vibe than like, hey, what can I do? um but so it's almost like there's like a slightly counterintuitive intelligence when it comes to building things, where you're just focused. Again, it's this quality that most really great people have, where they're just present and available in that moment. And that moment might be small, but as long as they're present in that moment, that part is incredible. But I mean, every story is just better. Like, please just come on and tell stories for 3 hours. Because these are fascinating, and it's just it's funny how things turn out, but two, I think it's very important to acknowledge it, and to be a testament to, you're just willing to ask. And what's the worst somebody's gonna say? No.
Yeah, and it also, I think I agree with you 100%. Like a lot of times it's just you're gonna you what like you asked me that question previously. Do you just go with it, or do you try to explain yourself? I think a lot of times you follow your intuition, and so many times we think a lot. We think about consequences, and we think about a lot of things, which is important. I do think it is important because there are times decisions are made when you're having such an impulse, like it's not necessarily going to be having much structure.
Hmm.
However, I do think the value of intuition and the value of when you feel something really strong, and the ability to follow that intuition, and the ability to actually capture that moment of joy and say, okay, you know, I can do something like that, or I can make it happen. That I do think is something that hasn't been really talked about, which is how do you follow in your intuition? How do you follow these moments of excitement, or moments of inspiration, or moments of a possibility? And what I look back of my career or my life, these are very small moments of aha, like maybe I can do something. Aha, maybe I will do a layover in San Francisco. I'll get off the plane and I'll meet the people. Or aha, you know, I'll leave um, America to Australia from LA so I can meet Conan's team. Like these are kind of a spur moment of ideas, and to implement the ideas, a lot of times you kind of have to check with your feeling first before you go to the thinking.
Yeah.
Because if you go directly go to thinking, a lot of times people are like, this is crazy, that's a crazy idea, no, that's not going to work. You got immediately shut down by yourself, by your critical brain, because your critical brain is always scanning what's already happened in the past, and they will always look at what's being done and then come up with a conclusion. Oh, that never has been done before, and thus you might not be able to make it, right? But
Yeah.
if you actually coming from the feeling part, which is your heart, instead of your brain first, and you check with your heart and you go, do I feel this strength of making it happen, or do I feel the joy that is so prevalent and big that can overcome something, and maybe I can make something new, maybe I can make something has never been done before.
I think when you tap into feeling, this allows you to strike balance because there's a time to be dedicated, maybe even a perfectionist when it comes to your art, your craft, what you're doing. But there's also a time to be flexible because if you can't be flexible, then you can't be open to new and different opportunities or new and different ways to look at a problem creatively. And so that part just fascinates me. Well, what are you doing right now?
What I'm doing right now, I'm talking to you right now.
I, I when don't get me wrong. The second I asked that question poorly, I was like, yeah, she's gonna get me on that one.
Yeah, I did. I gotcha.
Usually I ask a question in a flippant way where I'm like shamelessly plug all the cool things you're doing.
Well, thank you for asking. First of all,
Yeah.
I'm so happy we're doing this podcast together, but also as a celebration of this podcast we're doing. And I don't know if this has been done before, but I hope this is the first time people are doing it, which is I created this poster. The listener probably won't be able to see, but you should check the social, whether it's on Shorty and myself. We will be posting a 15th anniversary of my journey, which happened to be the 16th anniversary of Shorty Awards, in conjunction with Pantone Color of the Year 2024. So one of the announcements I'd love to share was or is that I am so happy to be one of the Pantone Color of the Year Spotlight artists.
Mm.
So this year, 2024, the Color of the Year Pantone Color Institute choose is the Peach Fuzz, which is the top color that you see. It's a peachy color that bring people together. And I was also using it to make the dumpling, the peach color dumpling, and the peach color boba tea. It's a very kind of delicious and kind of fun and also soft color that I think really kind of gives a vibe of community, this coziness. And what I also thought it was interesting is because I created the Shorty whale. This is in 2014, 10 years ago. I created the Shorty whale because what's really funny is I met the Shorty Awards logo designer, Aaron, at Shorty Awards in 2009, which is 15 years ago. And he came to me, he's like, Yiying, I gotta tell you, the Shorty Awards logo, which is the whale tail, was inspired by your whale. And the color of the Shorty color was inspired by the turquoise in your artwork. So in 2014, which is their 6th anniversary, I decided to create a new whale, which is this top hat whale that inspired by the tail of the Shorty Awards logo. And now, fast forward 10 years later, I created this entire color palette that incorporating with the turquoise and also the peach fuzz. And I expanded the color, so I have the entire color of the new celebration color that incorporating with all 8 colors. Because remember the 8 birds, they're now become the wave because we're here to make waves. So I will make the color palette. Boom! Yes, exactly. I'll make the color palette available for people to download. Pantone and I, collaborating with Shorty, we are making the color palette available on Pantone Connect, and everybody can go there and download it and be creative and create your own artworks utilizing these color palette. So that's one of the projects that I would love to announce. And this is also the first time I'm doing it with Jeff on the podcast. So super excited.
Well, this gives me now 8 different colors to try and have a suit for the 16th annual Shorty Awards. I was thinking I was just going to have to be turquoise, and now I have options, which is wonderful. Also, as someone who hosts a podcast that is mostly non-visual, the fact that the Pantone color is peach fuzz is wonderful because most people can be like, yeah, peach fuzz. Okay, I can, because if it was like storm cloud or agreeable gray, like trust me, anybody who has ever painted a house and is just looking at colors is like, well, why would I want something that's called agreeable gray? Like, like this, like I'm going for the bare minimum. I'm like, I don't want people to even notice this color, agreeable gray. So I'm glad that we're doing a much more vibrant thing. Yes, please. Also, thank you so much for all of the shouts to the socials because, if you want to see this, you need to look at it. So we always appreciate that. Anytime we give somebody incentive, it's like, check us out on social, please. No.
You can actually see the color.
Yes. I'm not going to, I'm not going to describe any of them for anyone other than peach fuzz and turquoise. You're going to have to figure out the other 6 on your own. But
all right.
But no, there is no, I am looking at it right now. There is no agreeable gray in there or I think there's also one that's called passive gray. If you're like on really on the fence about it, there are way too many names for gray, and none of them are fun. There's no vibrant gray. I'd like to pitch that to Sherwin-Williams. Vibrant gray.
Vibrant gray, yeah, the fabulous gray.
No, I like that it's passive and agreeable because if someone walks into the room, they agree with the color, right? But if it's passive gray, they'll be like,
I want a passive aggressive gray.
Oh, there it is. Yeah, it's like a gray, but if you like just turn 45 degrees, it's like bam. Purple.
It become a rainbow. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Yeah.
Passive aggressive gray is like you just walk by it and all of a sudden it just kind of mutters something. But not okay. So not to derail it anymore. When we finish these, we do something called keep it short. The 3 questions. The questions are short. The answers can be however long you'd like them to be. Okay. Question 1. Yiying, most ridiculous moment of your entire career outside of the stories you've already told.
Oh, wow. So many of them. Dang. Gee,
You can your answers can be long. You can name multiple ridiculous things. We're here for it.
There's so many ridiculous things. I don't even know where to start. Can I think about it and then you throw me another question and I'll come back to you with the first question?
You know what? You are the first person who has invoked the right to pass and come back later, like Family Feud. Yes. Vashika, you are allowed to ask question 2, and we
Agreeable
will come back.
gray. I can't get over that.
Yeah, let's
Okay,
go with question 2.
I'll ask you
Yeah,
another
go.
question. My question is, with all your partnerships that you've done with Disney, Adobe, Skillshare, all these great brands, what has been your favorite one?
Oh.
Oh,
Why are you
again,
asking so many hard
yeah,
questions? Like,
Vashika. I was like, okay. I thought she was going to ask a more agreeable question, but then it's like, hey,
That's it.
which,
oh my
yeah,
God.
which one of your children are your favorite?
Do you like your dad or your mom?
Okay, I'll ask another question. Okay,
These are really
easier
hard
question.
questions. What, do you ask the same question to all your guests?
No, we never asked it. Well, no, we really never asked the same question twice. So, yeah,
Okay.
we just woke up and chose violence. I'm so sorry.
Right to pass, man.
I'll ask an easier question. What's a design tool or software that you would recommend to upcoming designers?
Oh man, Pantone Connect. I really like Pantone Connect because you can take a photo of your environment. Like for example, I'm taking a photo of these beautiful leaves, and I want to figure out what particular Pantone colors that matches the tone. Because you can describe to people, I like green, but like what shades of green? You're like, oh, the shades of green that looks like apple, and they're like, what kind of apple? So it goes on and on. But when you actually use Pantone Connect, you can take a photo and it will pick up and convert that to different Pantone color books. So if you're working with, let's say, a fabric, they will give you the corresponding color of that green in fabric book. Or if you work with matte paper, it will convert to the matte paper green that's matching that color. Or if you work with coated paper, it will actually convert that to coated paper or CMYK. So it's incredible to get the color accuracy, and it's also on your phone and it's available. So you just sign up and it's actually available to the subscribers. So I really enjoy that app.
That's amazing.
Question 3.
Yes.
Is there a time, place, moment that you use consistently for motivation?
Good question. So, I don't know if this is a ritual, but every now and then I go to the supermarket or go to the market. Nowadays, I'm just going to the market on Sundays or Wednesdays because we have a actual farmers market. When I was in Australia back then, I don't have the access to a farmers market, so I just go to the supermarket to get inspiration. I know. I would like walk down the aisle of like fruits and vegetable, and I'm just looking at these amazingly displayed like creatures by people, and to me I feel like I am walking in a museum, just the aisles of stuff. Because like if you think about it, you go to the museum these days, they're showing stuff from the 50s, or they're showing stuff from the 1920s, which is 100 years ago, and now it's like, look at these specimens, in like, these are how people live 100 years ago. And I'm thinking, this is cool. Like 100 years later, this is going to be a specimen in the museum. I'm living in a museum right now, and I can purchase them. Like, this is $2.99. It's affordable. And so, yeah, I love like seeing all the different packagings of tea, the same green tea, but different brands. And if you think about it, all these goods, consumer goods, there's somebody behind it. Somebody make a decision of the packaging of the tea. Like some designers, like I used to actually design tea packagings when I was still in school. Like somebody is behind these work and these items that you buy. And so to me, this is how I get like inspiration. Also do my grocery shopping too.
Well, it's productive, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, in an effort or an ongoing effort to make myself even more unpopular on this podcast, I will share that when I do that, I like to do a good supermarket meander. So I will take 60 minutes, which is annoying to some. But here's the part where it makes me even more unpopular. I have my Bluetooth in and I'm listening to a podcast because I like to be around people, but I don't want to talk to people. So therefore, I can just feel like I'm there, but not there. And then I'm learning something while I'm walking. Although sometimes I'm laughing. And people don't know why, which in retrospect, I might need to rethink this entire decision. But it bought me enough time to remember we're playing fast money. And back to question number one, Yiying, most
Oh
ridiculous
gosh,
moment.
what was the question again?
Most
This is
ridiculous moment, or any ridiculous moment.
one ridiculous moment was I got the opportunity to go to this like a dinner party, and it was a bunch of people who are government folks, and sorry, it was a bunch of like it was a group of people, and a lot of them are coming from government, right? So they're very kind of proper and quite stoic. And it was kind of hard for me to open up a question or a conversation because I can feel they're kind of like, in their lane. And I remember one of the persons sort of started to ask me, so it's like, what do you do? Like, well, I said, I'm an artist. And he's like, oh, so what kind of art do you do? And I said,
Of course.
well, I do this and that. And I mentioned that I also created some of the emojis. And then he said, okay, so what kind of emoji do you make? And I said, I made, the boba tea. He's like, you made what? I said, boba tea. He's like, oh my God, he just completely changed. He's like, he just like, look at me, like, it was so much like excitement. He goes, my daughter who's 13, she loves boba tea. If I tell her that, can I get a selfie with you? I was like, what just happened? He's like, I'm gonna send a photo to my daughter. You're her hero. Like, I was like, whoa, what just happened? So that was a very just ridiculous moment, and I was like, wow, this is incredible, like how I can quickly connect with someone, because of some of the work I do.
I love it. That was ridiculous. That was awesome. Ying, thank you so much for joining and bringing a bunch of color to our world that's mostly agreeable gray.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm so happy to be here with you.